So great to be here today. I'm Penny Norman. I'm Group Strategy Director at Rescue. I actually specialize in the area of substances, specifically in communications. Rescue Agency, we do communications across all of public health, whether that's tobacco cessation, cannabis, knowledge around cannabis for teens, and how to reduce their usage. But I specialize in substance use. And I wanted to make a little point before I dive in today to say, I've been working so closely with Brad and his team at King County, and also Reagan and his team on this campaign. And I am lucky enough to work across the US with states like the state of California, the state of Illinois, Maine, Virginia. And I can't tell you how many times public health officials have come up to me and said, oh my goodness, the things that are going on in King County are so inspirational. And I just wanted to tell you all that because I hear it all the time. And I wanted to say, huge congratulations, because you guys are fighting the fight. You're doing progressive things, and it's being seen around the US. So I want to do a call out there. And also, when I start working with different counties and states, I'll talk to them about your work, and it makes them bolder. So your impact, what the stuff you're doing here, is going beyond your borders. So I just wanted to shout that out today. So today I'm going to talk about a new campaign we launched in the fall. All around, we wanted to create a public awareness communications campaign to reduce public stigma. And what we really wanted to do was motivate the public to reappraise their views of those with substance use disorder and those in recovery. And it was a big target audience. We wanted to reach all King County adults 19 to 65. This was a big ask. So we spent time to really understand and really go through a significant process to get to a compelling message. So our process involved, first and foremost, strategy development, really looking at what information is out there, what data is published around this topic area, really understanding what are the big themes of stigma, developing hypothesis, developing sample messaging. And then we went out and we did research with those with stigmatized views, which is interesting because you can't really recruit people go, oh, hey, are you stigmatized against people with substance use disorder? It doesn't really work. So we had a very detailed descriptor and lots of questions to really, and something called the Stigma Index, which kind of pulled out people who did indicate they had stigmatized views. And actually many people do, because it's just naturally already in the reporting that's out there, in the narrative that's out there. Once we did that research, we found out some key messaging, and we went on and developed video, out of home, social media, and put that live as well as reported on it. So I'm going to take you through that process today. So the impact we know of stigma on those seeking recovery is significant. First and foremost, we know that it decreases people in seeking help, and that's very often due to judgment, and also it sort of pauses people in admitting that they maybe have a problem. It holds people in denial because they otherize it away from them. Oh, I'm not as bad as this person, or they're not seeing themselves in how substance use disorder is depicted in the press. So it really holds back people from seeking help. It also, we see social isolation with people with substance use disorder from their support network, and they naturally gravitate to people who also maybe use substances because they feel at home there, they feel less judged, and that's all because of the stigma they may feel from their network. We also see a decrease in receiving treatment, and also workplace and housing discrimination. And that's really important because those systemic things, if you don't have them in place, it means you're very unsettled, and it's very hard to recover if you don't have an income and you don't have housing. So it's really important that those are addressed as well. When you look at the construct of stigma, there's sort of three big components. There's structural stigma, and those are the systemic exclusion of those with substance use disorder or in recovery from resources and opportunity, and that's often seen through harmful policy responses. It can be reporting in how newspapers report on it, and it can be how people are recruiting candidates for a job. Then we have public stigma, which is where we wanted to focus on. This is really negative beliefs, attitudes, and fears in society in relation to someone with or in recovery from substance use disorder. And both these elements flow down to creating something called self-stigma. Those with SUD internalizing those negative stereotypes, which feel shame and fear around sharing their struggle. What we know is that if you can move public stigma, it transcends down to both structural stigma changes and self-stigma changes. So that's where we started. This is our first campaign around stigma within King County, so it was really important we started somewhere, and so we really focused on public stigma. When we look at public stigma, there are many components to it. What we saw is, first and foremost, there's a group of people who otherize it. I believe that SUD is not affecting people like them, and you see that in data. There's a fantastic stigma index released by Shadowproof in 2021 that really outlines this. This was a US-wide study. And what we saw is that, many people would be unwilling to have someone marry into their family with substance use disorder. They'd not be willing to socialize with someone with substance use disorder. Then there's a group, then there's a sort of belief that substance use disorder is a moral failing and a sign of someone being weak-willed. And you can see that in data around like how it's in no way, people do not compare it to any other disease, and it's seen as very different from a disease. And also 47% of people believe SUD is caused by a lack of moral strength. And then also there's a big tract of belief around it not being treatable, and a belief that someone with substance use disorder is untreatable and will fall back to this. And that falls down to everything from a belief that MOUD is substituting one drug from another and the stigma around that, as well as many people, 50% of people in this study with stigmatized views of those with substance use disorder would not alter their views if that person recovered, which I think was that was probably the most hard-hitting one for me. I was like, oh my goodness, what? They've done so much. What are you doing? And then the last one, which I think is so devastating, is this concept of people, this belief that they're somehow less valuable as humans, and that they need to be they shouldn't be treated equally going forwards, and whether that's they're 6 times less likely to hire someone with SUD as an example. So really damning data points around stigma that exist in the public realm and are very common. But all these data points are US wide. So we wanted to learn more about what was going on with the general public in King County. So we researched with 20 people who indicated they had stigmatized views, although they wouldn't have said it. But the study did isolate them, and that's who we spoke with. And there were some really interesting learnings that we had. First and foremost, language was really important. What we had was, when we talked about substance use disorder, they were totally confused. They had no idea what we were talking about. They were off in some other medical land, and they just had no concept that we were talking about addiction. And because we wanted our communications to be as graspable as possible, as quickly graspable as possible, we actually took the call to say addiction when we talked about it. Now, I'm not saying that that's where we want to be, but we need to make sure our language is as relatable to the audience we want to reach as possible, and we're going to take them on that journey. So for stage 1, we use that term addiction, but knowing it's a more stigmatized piece of language, I'd love to move them along in future campaigns. So you will see that word within this campaign for that reason. Also, no one recognized that they had stigmatized views, not a single person. They all said, oh, this ad would really work for people who are stigmatized. They just never recognized it, which I thought was so fascinating. And so things like end stigma did not resonate. In fact, they just didn't think it was for them. And so what was really important is we flipped the whole emphasis. Instead of talking about stigma, we flipped it to be active support, as a call to action to support addiction recovery. And that was really, really important switch. And also it was way less negative. It was way less blamey and shamey and you're a bad person. And, it was way more receptive. And loads of them said, oh, I'm not stigmatized. I'm a good person. I do great things. I volunteer. I do charity work. But they still held stigmatized views when you looked at the data and how they were responding. So I think by switching that, we would like to be kinder with our call to action. One of the most prevalent beliefs that we found of those 4 that we talked about earlier was that from this group, what we heard was that they did almost universally believe that someone with substance use disorder would forever be fragile and need to be treated differently in some way. And that was a consistent learning, and one that was so fundamental in their beliefs around substance use disorder. And also when we talked about recovery data, it was hugely surprising because they found it completely counter to what they were seeing in the press and the images they see and what they hear about addiction, or what they see in the media or what they see on TV shows. Few had heard that most people do recover from substance use disorder, and this data also actively made them reappraise how they viewed substance use disorder. So with this information, we also tested some messaging areas. So we actually tested 4 areas in the end, but this was the one that really sung out. Substance use disorder does not define someone's future. SUD is a treatable health condition that 75% of people recover from and go on and do amazing things. They raise families, volunteer at charities, have fulfilling careers, start companies, and give back to society. And what really resonated here was twofold. One, it was counter to what they were hearing out there in the media. It was a completely different narrative. And secondly, they really resonated that if for some of them did have friends and family who were suffering, they said that would be a piece of hope for people as well. And they loved that duality, that it would be a hopeful message for those suffering, but also reappraise the message out there. And just some quotes here. It's a very motivating message because you're putting it in factual, so we have all that data points, but also you're having this sort of emotional message around what's possible with those kind of outcomes, those positive outcomes for people. Someone else, just saying how surprised they were with some of the recovery data, and the bottom person saying it would be really effective with someone who's being more critical because you've got the facts to back it up. You're not just saying something loosey-goosey. They wanted the data points. So underneath this, this led us to develop 2 key messages for the campaign. One is "Don't count us out," which really addressed that sentiment that once someone has SUD, they will forever be more fragile, and raise awareness that most people do recover and go on and do great things. And the second message, which was also that we also created within the campaign, was "Support makes a difference," because we didn't want to just put a message out there and not have an active element within it. We wanted to show that even as a person as a general public, they had a role in supporting it and what that role would have. So show the role our audience has in recovery, and their support makes a huge difference to those with substance use disorder or in recovery. So we'll come on and see those messaging pieces. And our call to action here was support addiction recovery and learn more at the website. And we were lucky enough to be able to get this message out across a number of channels. For the first message, we wanted it to be high profile, capture attention, and add credibility to our message. So we went with some really high profile locations like billboards, connected TV, and connected TV is things like Hulu, little boxes that sit on top of your TVs. We were on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and we were in streaming audio and radio. And then for the second message, which was really trying to drive people to the site, we really focused on those clickable channels, which was Facebook and Instagram. What we knew is that this was the first time we were going out with a stigma message in King County. So this is sort of the spectrum of what you want to do when you try and change behavior. We wanted message delivery, then message exploration, and then active engagement. Because this is the first interaction that we were doing, the first piece of messaging, we really needed to deliver the message big, strong, and loud. And so that was our big focus for measurement and goals, and our secondary being that exploratory engagement. And if we're lucky, we'll get some active engagements, but really wanted to get our message out there, number one. And you may have seen it, we were live with our billboards throughout October, and then wrapped in with our connected TV, audio and podcasts, and social media from sort of late October all the way through to early January. So let's have a look at the ads. I'm going to see it. Hopefully this is going to play.
No one thought I could get here.
They lost hope.
Wrote me off.
But addiction
Doesn't define our future.
I rebuilt what I lost.
I created a home for my family.
I found a way to give back.
We aren't the exception.
Over 22 million.
Over 22 million.
Have recovered in the U.S.
But many won't seek treatment because of shame.
So don't count us out.
So don't count us out.
See how you can help others recover.
At Support Addiction Recovery.
Awesome. And we were also on billboards featuring those key stats, whether that's the 22 million that's recovered, the 80% accomplish life-changing things after they've recovered, and we were able to achieve some really significant locations across Seattle. Within social media, we had our theme here. We were able to really do fun things with GIFs and animation to bring those data points to life, and really, and then on support makes a difference. We really wanted to unpack how it made a difference. So how transformative support can be. Frustration subsides, hope is back. Trust rebuilds, new futures begin. Suffering ends, healing starts. Just showing that they had a role to play. And I'd also highly recommend checking out supportaddictionrecovery.com. We created this landing page for the whole campaign. We wanted a really strong statement at the top. And then straight underneath that, we have the interactive quiz, which was really asking people, do you know the data around recovery? It was really nice because what we were able to do actually throughout the campaign is work out where are the gaps in knowledge. And so we have a running title on that, and we can actually monitor that at any point. So people can do that quiz to guess if they know the data points. We also have ways to support and also local resources. So what was the impact? The great news was we made a significant impact across King County as far as people seeing our message. People saw our message over 28 million times, and it reached 83% of our audience group. We also achieved 2.2 million video and audio completes, which is when they finish the video or finish the audio as well. So really making sure that message landed. They didn't skip it. And we also, which I loved, is we got 1.6 thousand likes, saves, and shares, which is a positive action. And we had over 8.8 thousand website visits, which was, given it wasn't our core goal for the campaign, was significantly more than we were expecting. I think one of the most proud things, though, is that we generated conversation around a topic that is often silent. This topic is not discussed at all. And we really expected a lot of negative comments. And we did receive quite a few, but we were able to go back to people who had those negative comments and open that discussion. So on the right there is our responses. So someone would say, would counter us or challenge us, and we can say, hey, let's have this conversation. And suddenly we're finding the people with truly stigmatized views, and we're able to have a conversation, which was really exciting. But we also had an amazing outpour of positive message and thanking us for this message to go out there, and also their own stories of recovery. So it was also a really profound kind of a profound amount of conversation happening, which I thought was really exciting. And we also encourage people to engage deeper with the topic. We had over 1,000 quiz engagements, 260 people clicked to the support resources, and 142 clicked to local resources as well. And with that, that's what I have for you.